The classroom buzzed with energy as students settled into their seats, the chatter mixing with the scratch of pens on paper and the rustle of notebooks. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the room's vibrant posters of mathematical concepts and famous mathematicians, yet the atmosphere felt charged with an undercurrent of tension. It was a typical day at the university, where academia met ambition, but unspoken biases lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. At the front of the room stood Professor Hargrove, a man known for his sharp intellect but equally infamous for an arrogance that often overshadowed his knowledge. Donning a tweed jacket and thick glasses, he surveyed his students with an expression that oscillated between indifference and condescension. The professor had a reputation for fostering a competitive environment, yet his demeanor often left no room for questions from those he deemed less capable, especially if they were from marginalized backgrounds. Among the students was Jordan, a young black man who had enrolled in this advanced mathematics course, eager to prove himself. With a knack for numbers that had emerged early in life, Jordan was not just another student, he was a math prodigy who had won regional competitions and earned scholarships based on his brilliance. However, in this classroom filled with predominantly white faces, he felt both excitement and apprehension. Would his talent shine through, or would it be overshadowed by preconceived notions about his race? As the class began, Professor Hargrove launched into a discussion about calculus principles, speaking with an air of superiority that seemed to put everyone on edge. Students listened intently, jotting down notes while exchanging glances. Some shared nervous smiles while others appeared lost amidst the complexities of derivatives and integrals. The environment was rife with competition, yet there was an invisible line separating those who felt confident, and those like Jordan, who bore the weight of skepticism on their shoulders. During a moment of silence after posing a challenging question to the class, Professor Hargrove's gaze landed on Jordan. A smirk crept across his face as he remarked, "I can't imagine someone like you grasping these concepts easily. Perhaps math isn't your strong suit?" The words hung heavily in the air, puncturing any sense of camaraderie among the students. Gasps echoed softly around the room as whispers spread like wildfire. Jordan's heart raced at the professor's abrupt dismissal. His mind flooded with memories of late-night study sessions and relentless determination, a stark contrast to the stereotype hurled at him. As humiliation washed over him, Jordan realized that this moment could either define his time in this class or ignite a fire within him that would change everything. As the class continued, the initial shock of Professor Hargrove's remark lingered in the air like an unwelcome guest. Jordan tried to focus on the lecture, but the professor's condescending attitude loomed overhead, casting a long shadow over his thoughts. It wasn't just one flippant comment, it was part of a pattern that had emerged over the weeks. The professor often struggled to mask his biases, particularly towards students of color, whom he viewed through a lens tainted by stereotypes. In previous classes, it became evident that Professor Hargrove had an uncanny ability to overlook the contributions of minority students while elevating their white counterparts. When a question was posed, he would eagerly call on students with familiar faces, those who fit into his narrow view of what a successful mathematician should look like. He frequently dismissed hands raised by students like Jordan or others from diverse backgrounds, as if their very presence disrupted the intellectual purity he believed his classroom represented. During one lecture on algebraic structures, Professor Hargrove introduced a complex problem intended for advanced thinkers. As he paced the front of the room, he made it clear that success in this exercise would separate the wheat from the chaff. With an air of superiority, he remarked, "Let's see if anyone here can rise to the occasion, though I wouldn't expect the usual suspects to impress us." His eyes darted momentarily towards Jordan, a subtle jab cloaked within a general statement. A few heads nodded in silent agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was disheartening for Jordan to witness how Professor Hargrove's biases not only affected him but also shaped the classroom environment. The energy shifted as students began to feel the weight of expectations that were unfairly stacked against them. Those who did not fit Hargrove's mold hesitated to participate fully, fearing ridicule or dismissal. Their brilliance dimmed under scrutiny, while others flourished under Hargrove's approving gaze. Yet beneath this facade of confidence, Jordan simmered with determination. Each time he witnessed the professor underestimate his potential or that of his peers, it ignited a fire within him. He was acutely aware of historical disparities in academia, particularly in math and science fields where minorities were often sidelined. Those moments of bias revealed not only Professor Hargrove's ignorance but also a broader systemic issue that needed to be addressed. Jordan's resolve strengthened with each interaction. He refused to continue as a silent victim of prejudice. Instead, he vowed to demonstrate his capabilities and challenge the professor's misguided assumptions about talent and race head-on. Little did Professor Hargrove know that behind Jordan's composed exterior lay a fierce intellect ready to break free from the chains of prejudice that sought to bind him. Jordan's journey into the world of mathematics began long before he stepped foot in university. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, he was raised by his single mother, who worked multiple jobs to provide for him and his younger sister. From an early age, Jordan exhibited an innate affinity for numbers. While other children played with toys, he found joy in solving puzzles and calculating the number of candies in a jar. His mother recognized this talent and made sacrifices to ensure he had access to educational resources, often driving him to math camps and tutoring sessions. In elementary school, Jordan quickly garnered attention for his exceptional abilities. He won several math competitions, leaving both teachers and classmates in awe of his skills. However, that recognition came with its own set of challenges. Despite his achievements, he often faced skepticism from peers who couldn't reconcile his talent with their preconceived notions about black students. Comments like, "You're just lucky," or "You don't look like a genius," stung deeply but only fueled Jordan's determination to excel. As he advanced through middle school and high school, the stakes grew higher. Jordan consistently ranked at the top of his class, yet he remained painfully aware of the systemic barriers that loomed over him. Teachers would frequently assume that he would struggle in advanced courses, opting instead to guide him towards less challenging material. It was a narrative all too familiar, a talented student being deemed unworthy simply because of his race. Yet each time a teacher misjudged him, Jordan responded with quiet resilience, striving to exceed expectations. High school brought new opportunities as he earned scholarships to attend prestigious competitions and programs designed for gifted students. Here, surrounded by peers who shared his passion for mathematics, Jordan flourished. He became a leader in math clubs and participated in regional contests where he often finished among the top competitors. Yet even within these spaces, the shadow of bias lingered. He noticed how judges sometimes favored others based on charisma rather than merit. When it came time to apply for college, Jordan faced another hurdle, navigating an application process riddled with implicit biases against students from low-income backgrounds. Nevertheless, armed with recommendations from supportive mentors who recognized his brilliance, he secured admission to a respected university. As classes began and reality set in, Jordan yearned for acceptance but braced himself for more misunderstandings. His heart raced at the prospect of proving that he was not just another stereotype but a prodigy capable of achieving greatness, if only given the chance. Little did Professor Hargrove know that behind Jordan's calm exterior lay years of perseverance and a relentless commitment to defy expectations shaped by prejudice. The classroom was abuzz with anticipation as Professor Hargrove prepared to lead a discussion on complex equations, and students braced themselves for the challenge. With his characteristic air of superiority, the professor posed a difficult problem, expecting only the most adept minds to step forward. The room fell silent as everyone's gaze shifted between their notes and the professor, waiting to see who would take the leap. As the minutes ticked by, Jordan felt a mix of thrill and trepidation. He had studied hard for this moment and knew he had the skills to solve the problem. However, amid his rising confidence was the haunting memory of the professor's earlier dismissive remark. In a split second, he decided to raise his hand, ready to prove that he could rise to the occasion. "Jordan, you seem eager," Professor Hargrove remarked, his tone dripping with skepticism as he gestured toward the front of the class. "Given your background, this might be a bit of a stretch for you, but go ahead and try." A murmur of disbelief coursed through the room, yet the professor carried on nonchalantly, assuming Jordan would falter. Ignored by classmates and silenced by uncomfortable glances, Jordan felt vulnerable yet fueled by anger. He stood up, putting aside his trepidation, and carefully walked through his approach to the equation, articulating each step methodically. As he worked, Jordan explained his reasoning with clarity, casting aside any doubt about his capabilities as a mathematician. However, instead of acknowledging Jordan's effort and skill, Professor Hargrove interrupted with a condescending laugh. "Surprising. I didn't think you'd grasp the concepts so quickly. Maybe math isn't entirely foreign to you after all," he quipped. The pointed sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable, not only belittling Jordan's achievement but also echoing stereotypes that suggested a black student could not excel in such a challenging discipline. The tension in the room intensified as students exchanged uneasy glances, some visibly shocked while others appeared uncomfortable with the professor's remarks. Jordan felt the heat rising in his cheeks. It was no longer just about solving a mathematical problem, it was about standing up against prejudice in an environment that should celebrate diversity. With resolve coursing through him, Jordan completed his demonstration on the board, revealing not only the correct answer but multiple pathways to arrive at it. Silence enveloped the classroom as his brilliance shone through, cutting through Hargrove's cutting commentary. The professor's expression shifted slightly, but rather than concede defeat or openly acknowledge his bias, he stammered something about moving on, desperately trying to regain control of the conversation. Jordan took his seat amidst the buzz of murmuring voices around him, a blend of admiration and disbelief at what they had witnessed. In that moment, he understood that he had challenged not just the professor's prejudices but also faced down the barriers that had long sought to define him. As the echoes of laughter faded and the professor's dismissive remarks hung in the air, Jordan felt a surge of conflicting emotions crashing over him like a tidal wave. Humiliation surged within him, hot and sharp, as he realized that he had become the target of ridicule solely because of his race. The weight of that moment pressed heavily on his chest. It felt as if every pair of eyes in the room was scrutinizing him, assessing his worth through the lens of stereotypes. Despite his previous achievements, he suddenly questioned whether he truly belonged there. Anger flared up next, a fierce, burning resolve that threatened to overshadow his humiliation. He had fought too hard to reach this point, to let a single derogatory comment undermine everything he had worked for. Memories of sleepless nights spent solving problems and overcoming obstacles flooded his mind, fueling his determination. Jordan had experienced the sting of prejudice before, and each instance had only sharpened his focus and resilience. This time, he wouldn't simply absorb the insult, he would confront it. As he stood in front of the class, hands gripping the edge of the whiteboard, Jordan reflected on what the professor's words meant not just for him but for countless students who faced similar biases every day. He felt the burden of representation resting squarely on his shoulders. It wasn't just about proving his capabilities but also about challenging the flawed perceptions that so many held. Determined not to let Professor Hargrove's comments define him, Jordan took a deep breath, drawing upon the quiet strength that had carried him through difficult times. With each step he took in solving the equation, Jordan transformed his feelings of humiliation into a powerful motivation. He articulated his thought process clearly and confidently, deliberately showcasing not just his mathematical prowess but also his tenacity in the face of adversity. As he presented multiple methods to reach the solution, he felt the atmosphere shift subtly. A sense of respect began to emerge among his classmates, many of whom had felt similarly marginalized at some point in their academic journeys. Despite Professor Hargrove's attempts to undermine him, Jordan recognized that this moment was not merely a personal struggle but part of a larger narrative surrounding race and education. The professor's prejudice no longer held power over him. Instead, it fueled a fire within that urged him to push back against ignorance and bias. As he finished solving the problem and returned to his seat, an unexpected wave of relief washed over him. His heart still raced from the intensity of the moment, but nestled amidst that anxiety was a profound sense of empowerment. Jordan understood that confronting prejudice was not only about proving oneself but also about forging a path for others to follow. In that instant, he resolved to continue challenging misconceptions, not just for himself, but for anyone who dared to dream beyond society's narrow expectations. As the atmosphere in the classroom shifted following his previous demonstration, Jordan felt a palpable energy surrounding him. His heart raced not just from his earlier success but from a renewed sense of purpose. This was more than just an academic exercise, it had become a battle for recognition, a chance to showcase his true abilities against the prejudices that had tried to define him. The professor moved on to another topic, posing a particularly intricate problem that seemed designed to challenge even the most adept students. As he wrote on the board, Professor Hargrove made a grandiose display of confidence, implying that only a select few would be able to grasp the complex concepts he presented. He glanced over at Jordan, smirking slightly, as if expecting him to retreat into silence again. Jordan felt an overwhelming surge of determination. This was his moment. He raised his hand slowly, then firmly, with clarity in his resolve. The room fell into a hush as all eyes turned towards him. "I'd like to give it a try," he said, voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in his stomach. Hargrove's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and for an instant, even skepticism flickered across his face. "Really? All right, go ahead," he replied, feigning disinterest while secretly eager to watch Jordan stumble. With measured steps toward the whiteboard, Jordan took a deep breath and began tackling the problem before him. He meticulously laid out each equation and reasoning process step by step, explaining his thought process as he worked through complex variables and functions that left many students scratching their heads. A quiet murmur began among his peers. Jordan's confidence was infectious. As he progressed through the problem, there was a change in the atmosphere, the tension morphed into respect and intrigue. Students who had previously dismissed him began to lean forward, captivated by how effortlessly he navigated through the complexities. Even those who had been loyal followers of Professor Hargrove couldn't help but glance at one another in disbelief as Jordan unraveled layers of the problem that initially looked insurmountable. Finally, with one last flourish, he solved it and stepped back, glancing around at his classmates. In that moment of silence following his revelation, Jordan caught Professor Hargrove's gaze fixed on him, not with disdain but with begrudging respect mixed with confusion, as if trying to recalibrate his understanding of who this student was and what he could achieve. The applause erupted unexpectedly from several classmates. Words of admiration echoed around the room as they recognized not only Jordan's mathematical prowess but also watched Professor Hargrove's demeanor shift slightly under pressure. The professor cleared his throat awkwardly and tried to regain control by moving on with the lesson. However, it was clear that things had changed. Jordan returned to his seat feeling triumphant yet humble. He had proven not just something to himself but shattered perceptions about what students like him could achieve, and given the opportunity, a pivotal turning point that would resonate beyond this classroom encounter and lay groundwork for future challenges he'd face in academia and life. With the class still buzzing from Jordan's earlier display of confidence, Professor Hargrove presented another intricate problem, this time involving advanced calculus concepts that challenged even the brightest students. The professor's tone was laced with skepticism as he instructed the class to work individually before reconvening for a group discussion. As the students began to scribble notes and equations, Jordan felt an electric thrill racing through him. This was an opportunity to showcase just how deep his understanding of mathematics truly ran. He took a moment to observe the problem set before him, allowing his mind to dissect it with practiced ease. Instead of feeling overwhelmed like some of his classmates, he saw connections where others saw confusion. With a determination that surged from within, Jordan began working through the solution step by step in his notebook, all while mentally mapping out multiple approaches. As the minutes passed and students finished at different paces, it became apparent that Jordan was executing the calculations rapidly and accurately. He found joy in revealing patterns and relationships within the functions, unraveling the complexities with a clarity that amazed him. This was what he had spent countless hours honing. Once he had arrived at what he considered not only a solution but several innovative ways to reach it, he raised his hand again, this time with unwavering confidence. "Professor Hargrove," he announced, steadying himself as all eyes turned toward him once more, "I believe I can explain this from multiple perspectives." Jordan walked up to the whiteboard, feeling the weight of expectation resting not just on his shoulders but also on behalf of those who had been underestimated before him. With each stroke of the marker against the board, he articulated his thought process clearly. He started by outlining one method using analytical techniques straight from their course material before branching into alternative solutions involving graphical interpretations and numerical approximations. The classroom fell into a captivated silence as Jordan navigated through derivatives and integrals with deft precision. His explanations were interwoven with enthusiasm and clarity. Even those less familiar with the material leaned forward in their seats, eager not to miss any part of his demonstration. He used metaphors and visual aids that made previously abstract concepts tangible, allowing everyone to follow along. As he progressed through each method, gasps and murmurs filled the room. Students exchanged glances of astonishment as they witnessed their classmate not only tackle what appeared daunting but do so in such an engaging manner that it sparked new interest in mathematics among them. Jordan concluded his explanation with an emphatic smile, glancing at some classmates who now looked at him with admiration rather than skepticism. There was no denying his talent. It resonated throughout the room like a palpable force that shifted perceptions. Even Professor Hargrove stood momentarily speechless, grappling with an undeniable realization of Jordan's capabilities that shattered any preconceived notions based on race or background. In that moment of triumph, understanding blossomed across faces that had once held doubt, and Jordan recognized that this was about more than mathematics. It was about redefining expectations and showcasing brilliance irrespective of societal biases. As applause began to break from students around him, Jordan felt a profound sense of validation thrumming within him, a genius unveiled and ready to challenge every limit set before him. As the applause subsided and the initial shock of Jordan's performance settled, Professor Hargrove stood at the front of the classroom, grappling with a tumult of conflicting feelings. For the first time, he found himself confronted with a stark realization that challenged his long-held beliefs about intelligence and capability based solely on superficial traits. Watching Jordan, who had previously been a mere subject of his skeptical remarks, transform into a figure of brilliance and confidence made him question the very foundation of his biases. The professor's mind raced through memories of past interactions, each instance where he had dismissed students like Jordan due to preconceived notions etched by societal stereotypes. Faces from previous classes flashed before him, students whose potential he had underestimated or outright ignored. As he stood there, wrestling with this newfound self-awareness, it was as if a veil had been lifted. He could no longer ignore the impact of his actions and beliefs on those around him. In that moment, Hargrove felt a mix of shame and confusion. He had built a reputation on being an expert in his field, yet here was a student displaying profound understanding that he had not only overlooked but actively belittled just days before. The classroom now buzzed with admiration for Jordan, while he felt an uncomfortable isolation from the excitement that filled the air. It was clear that Jordan's success was reshaping how the entire class viewed both him and their own perceptions. As he cleared his throat to regain composure, Professor Hargrove contemplated what to say next. A wave of remorse washed over him. He thought about how many talented students might have stepped back due to similar biases, intelligence reduced to nothing more than skin color in his eyes. However, rather than openly express this realization in front of the class, Hargrove chose to focus instead on leading them into further discussions about mathematics. Now, he began, his tone slightly softer yet still authoritative. I hope you all can see how complex mathematics can be approached from various angles. He glanced at Jordan briefly before continuing, we should always remain open to new perspectives. The comment seemed innocuous at first but carried an underlying message reflecting his internal struggle. While Hargrove attempted to maintain control over the lesson, it was clear that this experience would linger in both his mind and heart. The recognition of his bias, a long-standing pattern in academia, began to unearth a desire within him for change. He would have to grapple with these biases beyond this moment. True growth required acknowledgement and action. For Jordan, however, this moment signified much more than any recognition from Professor Hargrove. It represented triumph over adversity, a definitive challenge against societal expectations that had long dictated who could succeed in academia based solely on race. The applause echoing from his peers became not just validation but a collective call for change within their educational environment. As class continued onward with discussions deepening around mathematical theories and concepts prompted by Jordan's presentation, both student and professor embarked on different journeys shaped by this pivotal encounter, a confrontation with bias leading toward understanding and growth for them both. As the classroom buzzed with excitement following Jordan's remarkable demonstration, reactions from his classmates began to surface, revealing a spectrum of emotions and sentiments. Many students, who had previously been silent observers, now erupted in applause and cheers, their admiration for Jordan's brilliance unmistakable. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. It was as if a collective realization had dawned on the class, that they were witnessing not just a display of academic prowess but a powerful statement against the biases that had long lingered in their environment. A few students approached Jordan after class, their faces lit with enthusiasm. "That was amazing," one girl exclaimed, her eyes wide with respect. "I never knew math could be explained like that." Others nodded in agreement, echoing sentiments of pride in having someone like Jordan challenge the status quo. This newfound solidarity among peers provided Jordan with a sense of belonging he had yearned for since entering the university, a feeling that he was not alone in his struggles. However, not everyone reacted positively. In the back of the room, a group of students exchanged glances filled with skepticism and disbelief. They had been loyal supporters of Professor Hargrove and found it difficult to reconcile their admiration for their professor with the reality of what they had just witnessed. Whispers filled the air as they questioned whether Jordan's performance was a mere fluke or if it truly challenged the preconceived narratives they had held about minority students. One student voiced her concerns to another, whispering, "It's impressive, but I wonder if he'll keep it up for future classes." This remark highlighted an underlying bias that still persisted among some peers, an assumption that Jordan's success could be an isolated incident rather than evidence of his ongoing potential. As these mixed reactions unfolded, they prompted discussions that extended beyond academics and into deeper conversations about race and capability. Some students openly reflected on their biases, admitting that they hadn't anticipated such depth from someone like Jordan, and began to question why they ever held those beliefs in the first place. Jordan overheard snippets of these conversations while gathering his belongings and felt a mix of emotions wash over him. He appreciated the support from many but was also deeply aware that biases persisted within his peer group. It became clear to him that this moment wasn't solely about recognition, it was an opportunity to ignite change within their learning community. While some students were ready to embrace this new perspective, others remained entrenched in their biases, a reminder that change doesn't happen overnight. Yet for every skeptical comment made, there were voices rising in support, advocating for an inclusive environment where talent could thrive regardless of background. As the class ended and students began to leave, Jordan felt empowered by the growing solidarity around him, even amidst lingering doubts. He understood that his journey would not only involve proving himself academically but also confronting biases head-on and fostering conversations among peers about race and intelligence. This moment marked not just a personal victory for Jordan but also a step towards reshaping perceptions within this academic space, one discussion at a time. In the days and weeks following Jordan's remarkable demonstration, a palpable shift began to take place within the classroom and the wider academic community. The once quiet discussions about race, capability, and bias grew louder and more forthright. Students formed study groups where they not only explored mathematical concepts but also engaged in conversations about equality, representation, and the importance of inclusivity in academia. Jordan's performance had broken open a dialogue that many had long been reluctant to initiate. Professor Hargrove, too, found himself reflecting deeply on his teaching methods and interactions with students. He started to engage with his class differently. Rather than relying solely on familiar techniques, he sought out diverse teaching approaches that would encourage voices from all backgrounds to contribute. His syllabus began to include materials authored by mathematicians from underrepresented communities, an effort to broaden both his perspective and that of his students. As the semester progressed, some students began to confront their biases openly, acknowledging how they had previously viewed intelligence through a narrow lens. They discussed their feelings of discomfort when realizing they had underestimated Jordan and others like him, prompting further exploration of stereotypes that permeated their educational experience. This emerging environment encouraged student activism. Organized discussions on racial equity began to populate the campus calendar, addressing systemic inequalities within higher education. During one of these gatherings, Jordan took center stage once more. This time, however, it was not merely about proving his skills in mathematics. He spoke passionately about the need for equitable opportunities for all students throughout their academic journey. Intelligence is not defined by race or background, he asserted confidently before an engaged audience. It's time we create spaces where everyone can flourish. The resonance of his words seemed to fill the auditorium, fostering a greater sense of unity among attendees. The impact of Jordan's experience reverberated through the department as well. Faculty members who had previously witnessed Professor Hargrove's biases began to reflect on their own practices, recognizing that addressing racism required active participation, not just passive acknowledgement. Professional development workshops incorporating diversity training slowly became mandatory for faculty across various disciplines. Despite this progress, challenges remained. Some students still harbored doubts about whether these changes would bring substantial transformation or if they were simply surface-level adjustments. Still, many actively worked together to create inclusive initiatives aimed at uplifting marginalized voices within the academic sphere, efforts that gave hope for genuine progress. Through it all, Jordan emerged not just as a celebrated math prodigy but also as a catalyst for change, a living example of how one person's determination could spark a larger movement against bias and push toward inclusivity in academia. With each subsequent class session and meeting held across campus, discussions continued to unfold. There was no return to silence on topics that mattered deeply to so many. Each conversation contributed layers to this newfound narrative, one where every student's potential could shine without being overshadowed by expectations dictated by race or background. The journey toward understanding was just beginning, but momentum was building, driven by voices eager for change and unity in academia. The story of Jordan and Professor Hargrove serves as a microcosm of the broader societal issues surrounding race and education, highlighting the persistent biases that can undermine the potential of talented individuals based on their race. Jordan's journey from being underestimated to becoming a celebrated math prodigy illustrates the systemic barriers many students of color encounter in academic environments. These challenges often stem from ingrained stereotypes that equate intelligence with race, leading to both overt and subtle forms of discrimination within educational institutions. This narrative sheds light on the urgent necessity for change in attitudes toward diversity and inclusion across academia. It underscores the importance of recognizing and dismantling biases that can cloud judgment and inhibit the growth of minority students. Faculty members, like Professor Hargrove, must engage in continuous self-reflection and training to confront their preconceived notions, ensuring they create spaces that not only welcome but also celebrate diverse voices. Moreover, the impact of Jordan's performance extends beyond individual recognition. It sparks vital conversations about representation and equity within academic curricula. As discussions evolve around who gets to occupy spaces of intellectual authority, it becomes clear that educational materials must reflect a wide array of perspectives. By integrating works from mathematicians and scholars from underrepresented backgrounds into their teaching, educators can challenge the traditional narratives that have long dominated academia. Jordan's experience also highlights the collective responsibility of students to foster supportive environments where all voices are valued. The solidarity expressed by his classmates following his demonstration illustrates how peer support can serve as a powerful catalyst for change. When students unite to challenge biases within their educational settings, they not only uplift each other but also hold faculty accountable for creating inclusive learning experiences. However, this story also acknowledges that change is often met with resistance. Some students may still cling to outdated beliefs, questioning whether Jordan's success is an anomaly rather than a reflection of true potential. This skepticism reveals a deeper societal issue: the reluctance to let go of ingrained biases that dictate perceived capabilities based on race or background. Ultimately, the implications of Jordan's journey resonate far beyond his classroom experience. They call for a re-evaluation of how academic institutions approach diversity, urging educators and students alike to challenge existing paradigms that restrict opportunity based on superficial traits. As conversations about race and education continue to unfold within academic communities, they pave the way for a future where every student has the chance to excel without facing barriers rooted in prejudice. In essence, Jordan's story serves as a reminder that true inclusivity requires ongoing effort, an active commitment from both educators and students to cultivate environments where talent is recognized regardless of race or background. This story is not just about one individual's triumph but rather a collective movement toward dismantling prejudice and fostering genuine understanding within academia. The remarkable journey of Jordan, from being a target of ridicule to standing as a celebrated math prodigy, offers profound lessons for both individuals and educational institutions. At its core, this story underscores the importance of recognizing and nurturing talent regardless of background. It highlights the necessity for educators to confront their biases and actively work towards creating inclusive environments that allow all students to thrive. The incident serves as a catalyst for broader discussions about race in education, reminding us that biases often operate subtly but can have significant consequences on student perception and performance. It challenges us to question long-standing stereotypes that equate capability with race, emphasizing that intelligence is not confined to any demographic. Thus, it becomes imperative for faculty and peers alike to support diverse voices and experiences within academic settings. Jordan's triumph not only reshaped his peers' perceptions but also prompted introspection among faculty members like Professor Hargrove. Their realization of past mistakes signifies an essential step towards fostering an atmosphere where every student feels valued and respected. By integrating diverse materials into curricula and re-evaluating teaching methods, educators can create learning experiences that reflect the richness of varied backgrounds. This shift in pedagogy encourages collaboration among students from different walks of life, facilitating a more holistic understanding of subjects such as mathematics. Furthermore, Jordan's emergence as a leader within his community illustrates the ripple effect one individual's determination can have on collective advocacy for change. His ability to articulate the need for equitable opportunities resonates with many students who have faced similar challenges. The solidarity exhibited by classmates following his demonstration underscores the shared responsibility of students to challenge biases and promote inclusivity. However, the journey toward genuine inclusivity is ongoing and requires vigilance against complacency. While positive changes may take root, there remains the challenge of skepticism from those unwilling to let go of outdated beliefs. Engaging these individuals in meaningful conversations about race, capability, and equity is essential for dismantling barriers that persist in academia. As we reflect on Jordan's story, it becomes clear that true progress hinges on our willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about biases in education while actively seeking solutions for a more inclusive environment. We must recognize that every student deserves the opportunity to excel without limitations imposed by racial or socioeconomic backgrounds. In conclusion, Jordan's experience serves not just as an inspiration for aspiring academics but also as a crucial reminder that fostering diversity is essential in academia. The lessons learned emphasized the need for continuous dialogue around race and education, ultimately striving toward systems that embrace all talents, ensuring they are recognized and celebrated rather than overlooked or belittled because of perceived differences. In doing so, we pave the way for a future where every student's potential can be realized fully, contributing to a richer academic landscape for all.